Read aloud in a warm, calm, appeasing, and friendly tone. You've seen the videos, you've seen the listings, and you've probably had this thought. Is it actually possible to buy a real sailboat for 20 grand or less that doesn't sink my bank account or my body? Short answer, yes. Longer answer, yes, but only if you stop thinking in terms of cheap boat and start thinking in terms of smart trade-offs. In this episode, we're going to strip the romance away, walk through what a sub-$20,000 sailboat really gets you, what can't get you, how to avoid the boats that are cheap because they're basically trash, and how to end up with something you can safely sail, improve over time. Let's start with the part most people get wrong. What $20,000 actually buys you. When people ask, can I get a good sailboat for under 20? What they're really asking is, can I buy the dream on a budget? And the frustrating answer is, it depends which dream. If your dream is weeknight sails, weekend overnights, and the occasional coastal hop in decent weather, $20,000 is plenty. In fact, if you're disciplined and a little lucky, you might only spend a fraction of that. If your dream is Bluewater circumnavigation with a library of spares and every system duplicated, then yes, you might eventually cross oceans in a $20,000 boat, but only after adding a lot of sweat, time, and extra money. The hull might cost you 15, the refit another 15 to 30. The number on the bill of sale is not the whole story. So here's the mental model I want you to use. A cheap boat doesn't buy comfort. It buys capability that you unlock with work. You're not buying a finished product. You're buying a platform, some physics, and a list of problems. Your job is to make sure that list of problems is one you can actually handle. The first big shift is this. Stop shopping like a car buyer. Car buyers look at year, mileage, color, and extras. Boat buyers on a budget need to look at structure, rig, and systems. Cushions don't matter. Bluetooth speakers don't matter. A shiny chart plotter doesn't matter if the mast is about to fall down. When you go see a cheap sailboat, imagine you're an underwriter, not a dreamer. Ask one question over and over. What is the worst thing that can fail here? And how expensive is it to fix? Hull, keel, rudder, rig, engine, electrical. Those are the big ticket systems. If more than one of them is dying at the same time, the boat might be free and still not cheap enough. You want a hull that is fundamentally sound, a rig that can be made safe without bankrupting you, and an engine that either works or can be sidelined in a realistic way for how you plan to use the boat. Everything else is negotiable. Let's talk about what you can realistically get under $20,000. At the low end, say $3,000 to $7,000, you're looking at smaller boats, older boats, or rougher boats. Think 20-something to maybe low 30-footers, often with older gas or small diesels, basic systems, and cosmetics that have seen better days. What you get in that range is usually one of two things. Either a simple, bare-bones day sailor or weekend boat that has been used consistently and maintained enough. It's not pretty, but everything more or less works. Or a larger, once-loved cruising boat that has been sitting. That's the project. It looks like a bargain because the asking price is low compared to its size. But every year out of use is a debt the boat has been quietly accumulating. At the upper end of this budget, $15,000 to $20,000, you start to see more serious cruisers. Bigger hulls, more interior volume, better pedigrees, sometimes even decent rigs and relatively modern electronics. The trap here is thinking that because a bigger boat is only 20 grand, it's a deal. Bigger boats eat more bottom paint, more hull insurance, more dock fees, more everything. There's no such thing as a cheap 40-footer. There are only 40-footers that were cheap to purchase. So the smart move is this. Aim for the smallest boat that can actually do what you want, not the biggest boat your ego can stretch into the budget. A small, well-sorted 30-footer will make you happier and cost you less than a neglected 40-footer that overwhelms your time and wallet. Now, where do you actually find these boats? Most people start with the obvious places. Online listings, broker sites, classifieds. That's fine. It's useful to learn price ranges. But remember, those platforms tend to filter out the true bottom of the market or mark it up with commissions. The real budget deals live in less glamorous places. They're sitting on Craigslist with blurry photos and one-sentence descriptions. They're in Facebook groups where the seller says must sell this month, bring offers. They're tied to end docks with mildew on the canvas because the owner moved inland years ago. They're in yard storage under a gray tarp that's more duct tape than fabric. Sometimes they're in repossession channels where a bank is trying to get a non-performing loan off the books. Sometimes they're in charity auctions, donated by owners who chose a tax deduction over the hassle of selling. Sometimes they're in lien sales, where a marina is tired of sending unpaid invoices. If you're serious about a cheap boat, you have to become a bit of a detective. You can't just scroll once a week and call it good. You set alerts. You talk to yard managers. You ask around. You make yourself the person that brokers and marinas think of when they say, I know someone looking for a project. That doesn't mean you buy the first project you see. It means you see the deals before everyone else. So you found a candidate. The asking price is under 20. The pictures look promising. How do you walk onto that boat and know, within an hour, whether it's a maybe or a hard no? You don't start by admiring the teak. You start with the structure. Step 1 is the deck. A lot of cheap boats are cheap because the core is wet and the deck is turned into a sponge. You find this with your feet and your ears. You walk every square inch you can, barefoot or in soft shoes. You listen to the sound when you tap with knuckles or a plastic mallet. Firm and crisp is what you want. Dull and mushy means rot. Localized spots around a stanchion or a cleat can be repaired. Wide, soft areas, especially near the mast step, can be a deal breaker in this price range unless you're ready for a full racor. Step 2 is the connection between the keel and the hull. You're looking for cracks, signs of impact, or a smile-shaped gap at the leading edge where water has crept in. A bit of cosmetic crazing in old fairing is one thing. A weeping crack at the keel stub is something else. You go below, pull up floorboards, and look at the keel bolts. Bright, clean metal is rare but wonderful. Heavy rust, distortion, or rust trails streaming from the bases of the bolts tell you the keel fasteners have been sacrificing themselves for a long time. Fixable? Yes, with money and skill. Cheap? No. Step 3 is the rig. Not the color of the lines, not how shiny the winches are, but the age and condition of the standing rigging. On a budget boat, there's a high chance the wire is older than it should be. That doesn't automatically kill the deal, but it does mean you have to pencil in the cost of replacement. You look at swages for cracks, at turnbuckles for bending, at chain plates for rust where they pass through the deck. If something looks sketchy at the dock, remember that offshore loads are multiplied many times over. Step 4 is the engine. For a cheap boat, the engine is either your biggest asset or your biggest hidden liability. Engines hate being ignored. A diesel that has run regularly for 15 years can be healthier than a diesel that has idled at the dock for 2 hours a year. When you inspect, you want a true cold start. You put your hand on the block before the seller turns the key. You watch the exhaust. Brief smoke that clears can be normal. Persistent blue or white smoke usually isn't. You listen for knocking. You look for oil leaks, fuel leaks, corrosion on mounts, and cooling components. You check the hour meter, but you don't fall in love with the number. Low hours can be a warning sign of atrophy, not a badge of honor. Step 5 is the bilge and the smell. Cheap boats with dry, clean bilges are rare and precious. If you open a floorboard and the smell hits you like an old aquarium, something's been living there. A little mustiness is fixable. Standing brown water around keel bolts, floating trash, and an oily sheen tell you this boat has been abandoned emotionally long before it was listed for sale. If you make it through those 5 steps and the boat still seems structurally decent, then you start caring about everything else. Here's something most listings will never say out loud. Every cheap boat has a story about why it's cheap. Your job is to figure out whether that story ends with you sailing or with you paying for someone else's exit. Sometimes it's a simple life story. Owner got older, lost a partner, moved inland, changed jobs. The boat sat, unloved because selling it was emotionally hard. Those boats can be fantastic buys because neglect is shallow and sentimental value has turned to guilt. Often the logbook just stops. One year there are dozens of entries, the next year 3, then nothing. Sometimes it's a financial story. The buyer stretched to get the boat, discovered what dockage and maintenance actually cost, and realized they can't keep up. These owners may not have done much preventative work because money was tight. The boat may have hidden issues, but the emotional load is lighter. They're often relieved to see someone capable take it over. And sometimes it's a problem story. The boat was in an accident, or failed an insurance survey, or has known structural issues. In that case, you're not just buying a boat. You're buying a challenge. That's fine if you walk into it eyes open, but the price has to reflect the scope of the work. A $10,000 boat that needs $15,000 in repairs and can only ever be worth $20,000 is a bad equation. The key is this: you can fix systems. You can replace rigging. You can rebuild engines. You cannot make time or money magically appear. Don't buy problems you can't afford to solve. Let's talk about refit, because this is where the dream either becomes reality or dies in a dusty yard. New owners often make the same mistake. They try to do everything at once. New rigging, new sails, new electronics, new upholstery, new paint, new galley, new head. They tear the boat apart and spend 2 years getting it ready before it ever leaves the dock. Life happens in those 2 years. Budgets run out. Relationships change. The boat becomes another unfinished project. If you're on a tight budget, I want you to flip that script. Instead of asking, how do I make this boat perfect? Ask, what are the minimum set of things that must be safe and functional for me to go sailing this season? That list is shorter than you think. The rig must be sound. The hull must be watertight. The engine must start and run, or you must have a sane plan for no engine sailing in your local waters. The electrical system must not be a fire hazard. The steering must be reliable. The ground tackle must be adequate to anchor where you plan to anchor. Basic safety gear must be on board and not expired. Everything else is nice to have and can be upgraded in motion. You don't need the latest chart plotter to ghost up a river you've sailed 10 times. You can upgrade lights one weekend, canvas the next, cushions when winter comes. This approach does 3 things. It spreads your spending over time. It keeps your motivation high because you're actually using the boat. And it gives you real-world feedback on what matters to you, not what forums or influencers say should matter. Maybe you discover after a season that you don't actually care about hot showers aboard because you're never at anchor long enough, or that you absolutely care about cockpit shade because the midday sun is brutal. You then spend your limited funds on things that change your life aboard, not on check boxes. Now, we can't talk about cheap boats without talking about insurance and where you're going to keep the boat. There's a harsh but important reality here. In many places, marinas require at least liability insurance. Some won't accept older boats at all. Some insurers won't write hull policies for boats past a certain age or past a certain latitude. That matters. Before you fall in love with any specific boat, make 2 phone calls, one to an insurance broker and one to the marina, yard, or mooring provider where you intend to keep the boat. To the insurer, you say something like, I'm shopping for a sailboat under $20,000, around this size and age, in this region. What are your absolute lines in the sand? And what would you need to see on a survey to say yes? Let them talk about rigging age, electrical standards, through holes, storm plans. Write down. You have just gotten a free checklist for what acceptable risk looks like. To the marina, you ask about minimum coverage, storm requirements, and whether they have any restrictions on older boats coming in. Some places will flat out say, no new policies on boats over X years old. Better to find that out early than after you've wired money. For a truly cheap boat, the best option may be liability-only coverage that protects other people and satisfies most marinas without forcing you into a costly refit just to meet hull insurance requirements. You self-insure the boat itself by buying it cheaply enough that if the worst happens, it's a painful loss but not a financial catastrophe. Again, the key is honesty with yourself. A $20,000 boat bought for cash, kept on a mooring or trailer, and covered by liability only is a very different risk profile from a $200,000 boat financed with a mortgage and tied up in a Hurricane Alley marina. Let's turn to negotiation, because the number on the listing is almost never the number that should change hands. In the cheap boat world, sellers are often carrying more emotion than market data. Some think their boat is worth far more than it is because they remember what they paid. Some are so done with it that they'll take almost anything as long as you solve their problems quickly. Your job is to understand their pain points and structure your offer around relieving those, not just around driving the number down. One of the most powerful tools you have is time. Every month that boat sits in the slip, the owner pays. Dockage, insurance, occasional work, maybe a diver. If they're already disengaged, every bill feels like punishment. When you make an offer, don't only talk price. Talk timeline. I can give you X dollars. I have a surveyor lined up. I can close by next Friday, and the boat will be out of your slip before the end of the month. That package can be more attractive than a higher number from someone who needs to think about it for 3 months. Another tool is specificity. Instead of saying, the boat needs work, show them your math. The standing rigging is over 20 years old. I've gotten a quote from a rigger. That's roughly this much. The batteries are shot. That's this much. The bottom hasn't been painted in 4 years. That's this much. I'm willing to take that on, but the price has to reflect it. What you're doing there is converting emotion into a spreadsheet. Sellers might not like the result, but it's a lot harder to argue within. I just feel like it's worth less. And finally, understand when to walk away. The cheapest way to deal with a bad boat is to never buy it. You will feel pressure after investing time and energy into looking, researching, talking. But sunk costs of your time do not obligate you to take on a literal sinking cost in fiberglass form. If the survey reveals structural damage you underestimated, or insurance says no 3 times in a row, or the seller refuses to acknowledge reality, you say thank you and move on. There are more boats. So where does this leave you? Practically, if you're sitting there right now with a notebook, a number in your head, and a dream, here's the condensed plan. First, define what success looks like for the next 2 years, not for your entire life. Maybe it's owning a boat you can day sail and spend 2 or 3 nights aboard. Maybe it's doing 1 week-long trip every season. Maybe it's learning maintenance skills on something simple before you upgrade later. Then, decide your absolute total budget. Not just purchase, but purchase plus the first year of realistic refit and operating costs. Dockage or storage, insurance, basic gear, fuel, bottom work. If all in you have $20,000, you might spend 10 to 15 on the boat and keep the rest for the work. If you blow the full 20 on the hull, you have nothing left for the stuff that actually makes it move safely. Next, start hunting. Cast a wide net, but filter aggressively. You're not looking for love at first sight. You are looking for boats whose stories make sense, used regularly until recently, owned by someone with receipts, or started as a serious refit that stalled late, not early. You're looking for hulls that are boringly solid and for rigs that are either passable for now or clearly budgeted for. When you find a candidate, run the structure rig engine bilge inspection sequence. If it passes, get a proper survey, even on a cheap boat. A few $100s on a survey can save you tens of thousands in surprise repairs or disposal costs. Use the survey as your negotiation anchor. Offer a price that lets you solve the problems it reveals without busting your budget. Tie your offer to speed. Quick close, quick removal, hassle-free for the seller. Once you own the boat, resist the urge to gut it. Fix safety items first, then reliability, then comfort. Sail it as soon as you can. Let your experience drive your refit priorities. And as you're doing all this, remember the reason you went looking for a cheap sailboat in the first place. Not to win a refit contest, not to accumulate gear, to be on the water, to feel wind pressure on the helm, sunsets at anchor, the small smug joy of making coffee in a galley you brought back to life. $20,000 or less can absolutely buy you that. It just won't buy it ready-made. You are part of the build. If you accept that, buying a cheap sailboat stops being a gamble and becomes what it really is, a very specific kind of deal. You trade time, effort, and learning for access to a world that, on paper, should be out of your price range. Trade well, and that little number on the bill of sale might be one of the best deals you ever make.